Before we dive into today's story, take a moment, subscribe now and activate the bell icon. What you're about to hear will challenge your understanding of destiny, faith, and the hidden battles that rage beyond the veil. You won't want to miss what's coming next. This is more than history. It's a revelation, a glimpse into a cosmic war, a sacred man, and the unfathomable reason why even Satan himself wanted to claim his body. Stay with me. He was born to die. That was Moses' sentence from the moment he took his first breath in a world that saw his existence as a threat. Egypt was a place of power, yes, but also a land soaked in fear. Fear of prophecy, of rebellion, of a deliverer yet unborn. His mother wrapped him not just in cloth but in desperate hope, hiding him among the reeds of the Nile, where fate would decide whether he lived or perished. But fate had already whispered to the waters. Pharaoh's daughter found him, lifted him not just from the river but from death itself. In that moment, the divine script began to unfold. He grew up in gold, surrounded by pillars of pride and politics. But beneath the fine linen, Moses carried a bloodline drenched in slavery and suffering. He saw the whips, he heard the cries. The palace could offer him anything, but never peace. His true identity simmered beneath the surface, roaring like a storm waiting to break. And when the break came, it was with blood. One Egyptian, one act, and the prince became a fugitive. Exile stripped him of luxury, of title, of everything but breath and memory. Yet in the wilderness, something deeper awakened. He was no longer a prince. He was a shepherd. And in the quiet of the hills, among the bleating of sheep and the weight of years, the voice of God came like fire. Not a whisper, a command. Take off your sandals. This ground, this moment is holy. From the flames, destiny called him by name. But why Moses? Why this man with blood on his hands and doubt in his heart? God chooses not the polished but the prepared. He shapes purpose in pain. The very things that broke Moses were the tools that would build him into a leader. And Satan knew that. From the beginning, the adversary saw Moses not as a man, but a threat, a link in a divine chain leading straight to Christ. You need to see this. Moses wasn't just rescuing a people. He was igniting a movement. Every plague, every step through the parted sea was a declaration of war, not just against Pharaoh, but against the spiritual systems that held people in chains. This was freedom laced in fire, and Satan could feel the tremor. Imagine the fury. Imagine the panic in the realm of darkness as Moses climbed Sinai, as he stood trembling before thunder and received the law with trembling hands. The word of God carved in stone, boundless authority given to a former fugitive. Heaven trusted him, hell feared him. He wasn't perfect, but he was chosen. And that is why the battle didn't end when he died. It only escalated. Satan didn't come for Pharaoh. He didn't come for kings. He came for Moses. Because some men carry such purpose that even their bones threaten the kingdom of darkness. And that, my friend, is just the beginning. He stood at the edge of the impossible, between a murmuring people and a parted sea. Behind him, the weight of Egypt thundered forward with swords and chariots. Before him, the unknown yawned wide and terrifying. And in that space between fear and obedience, Moses did not flinch. He raised his staff, not with arrogance but with unshakable surrender. The waters obeyed him not because of who he was, but because of the one who sent him. This is where leadership is born, not in palaces, but in moments where faith is louder than fear. Can you feel the power in that? The people walked through walls of water, trembling, breathless, stepping on sand that had not seen daylight for centuries. Moses did not walk behind them. He led them, not as a man sure of himself, but as a man sure of his God. Satan watched all of it. He saw that obedience becomes a weapon. Every step Moses took with the people toward the promise was a blow to the darkness that had enslaved them. Deliverance isn't just physical, it's spiritual warfare. And Moses was winning. But freedom isn't clean. It's raw, messy. The same people who sang songs of victory turned on Moses when their thirst returned. He bore the weight of a nation that didn't understand the price of liberty. Yet he never gave up. He climbed mountains, pleaded with God, and led with a heart that bled for those who cursed him. This was not just a leader. This was a man emptied of himself to carry something holy. Leadership without scars is fiction. Moses bled for them long before he ever died. The enemy doesn't fear crowds, he fears conviction. And Moses had it. Through rebellion, idolatry, and betrayal, he remained aligned with the voice that first called him from the bush. But his greatest test didn't come from Pharaoh. It came from within. One moment of frustration, one act of disobedience, a rock struck, not spoken to. And in that fracture of faith, the consequences fell. He would see the promised land, but never walk in it. Isn't that terrifying? To come so far, only to stop just short? Yet even in that discipline, there was divine intimacy. God didn't send an angel to end his journey. He came himself, carried Moses up the mountain, showed him the land with his own hand, whispered the end in a language only friends understand, and then buried him. No ceremony, no stone, just dust and mystery. Because some things are too sacred for the eyes of men, and some men are too loved to be left behind without heaven's touch. But that's when the war began. Not in heaven, not on earth, but in the in-between. In the quiet place where the body of Moses lay, Satan came, the adversary, the accuser, seeking to claim what was not his, not to honor Moses, but to defile him, to use his remains as a monument to man rather than God. Because if the enemy cannot stop your life, he will try to twist your legacy. He wanted to turn a prophet into an idol, a servant into a snare. Enter Michael, the warrior, the defender. But even he did not argue with the devil. He did not curse, threaten, or debate. He spoke 5 words that cracked the air with divine finality. The Lord rebuke you. And with that, the claim was dismissed. Because when your life has belonged to God, not even your death can be stolen. Satan wanted a body. God had already secured a soul. And that right there is eternal victory. Heaven does not forget its servants. Even when the world moves on, even when the grave is silent, God remembers. Moses, whose final breath echoed on a lonely mountain, was not abandoned. He appears again, generations later, not in whispers, but in glory, standing beside Elijah and Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. Think about that. The man denied entrance into the promised land in life stood within the presence of the promised one in eternity. That is the justice of heaven. That is what Satan could never stop. God always writes the final word. This moment is more than symbolic. It's prophetic. Moses represents the law, Elijah, the prophets, Jesus, the fulfillment. And there, in that divine meeting, Moses is not a ghost. He is alive, radiant, whole. This is why the enemy fought for his body. Because if people ever truly understood that death holds no power over the chosen, the fear that fuels darkness would crumble. Satan tried to anchor Moses to the grave, but God had already written him into glory. Resurrection was not just coming, it was already speaking. But imagine the enemy's fury. He had waited, plotted, intervened, tried to hijack the story. And still, Moses stood with Christ, his body not found, his memory not defiled. This was no accident, it was strategic. If Israel had found his remains, they would have built a shrine, wept at his bones, turned a grave into a god. Satan wanted that. He wanted to turn reverence into idolatry. He didn't need to destroy Moses. He only needed to distort him. The enemy knows. Worship misdirected is worship stolen. This is the same tactic used today. The adversary doesn't just come after your life. He comes after your legacy. He wants to twist what you stood for. He wants your story to end in controversy, scandal, shadows. But Moses' life teaches us something defiant. When you walk intimately with God, not even death can define you. Your true legacy is hidden in heaven. And what's hidden in heaven cannot be hijacked by hell. Moses wasn't perfect. He was impulsive, reluctant, even disobedient at times. But he was chosen. And the chosen are protected, not by merit, but by covenant. His failures didn't disqualify him. They refined him. God didn't shield Moses from consequence, but he never revoked the calling. That's what grace looks like in leadership. And that grace silences every accusation. Even when Satan points to your flaws, heaven points to your faith. His leadership was forged in wilderness, not thrones. He stood between plagues and promises, rebellion and redemption. When the people sinned, he interceded. When God wanted to start over, he begged for mercy on their behalf. That's what real leaders do. They don't just carry power, they carry people. Moses bore a nation's weight not with pride, but with a trembling heart anchored in God's presence. That's why his absence still echoes in eternity. And yet perhaps his greatest legacy wasn't the Exodus, the commandments, or the parted sea. It was the intimacy. The word says God spoke to Moses face to face, as one speaks to a friend, not through riddles, not through fire, but directly. And when a man walks that closely with the Creator, it's no wonder the enemy trembles. Because every time Moses stood up, Satan lost ground. Every word, every prayer, every tear was a battle cry heaven answered. The man who once feared his voice became the voice of deliverance. There's something unshakable about the kind of man who stands in silence, listening, not to the noise of the world, but to the stillness of God. Moses mastered that. While others looked for signs in the sky, he waited for whispers in the cloud. His strength wasn't in the staff he held, but in the surrender he lived. That's what made him dangerous to hell. Not his miracles, not the plagues, but the fact that he obeyed when it was hardest, when it made no sense, when it cost him everything. Hell fears obedience more than it fears fire. Even in moments of divine anger, Moses defended the people who betrayed him. That's what separates leaders from idols. Idols demand sacrifice. Leaders become the sacrifice. He offered himself up for the sins of others more than once. "Blot me out of your book if you won't forgive them," he told God. That's the heart of a shepherd. That's the echo of Christ long before the cross. And in that echo we see the blueprint of true spiritual authority. Laid down, not lifted up. Hidden in service, not displayed for applause. The wilderness exposed the hearts of the people, but it revealed the depth of Moses. He could have walked away. Many would have. But he stayed, led, endured. Not for power, not for fame, but because he had seen God's glory. And once you've seen it, nothing else will satisfy. That's the difference. Some lead from ambition. Others lead from encounter. Moses led because heaven had touched him, and no amount of rebellion from the people could erase what he carried within. And it was that encounter, that fire still burning in his bones, that made his body a battlefield even in death. Satan didn't come for a corpse. He came for the remnant of glory that had once stood face to face with God. The memory, the symbol, the threat. If he could desecrate the body, he could try to bury the encounter. But he failed, because when something belongs to God, it is protected, even in dust. That's why your story doesn't end in failure, in sin, or in death. It ends in the hands of the one who authored it. This is where we find ourselves now, in the shadow of a man who never finished his mission on earth, but whose impact roars in eternity. Moses never saw the promised land in life, but he is forever part of the promise. His obedience echoes through generations. His intimacy convicts us. His legacy outlives him not because he was perfect, but because he was surrendered. And in that surrender, he became immortal, not in myth, but in purpose. So now, ask yourself, what are you living for? What are you willing to lay down, not to be remembered by men, but to be recognized by God? Let Moses' story provoke you, shake you, call you into something higher. This is not the time for small prayers and soft faith. It's time to walk where few are willing, to lead with fire, to serve without applause, to obey when no one else will. Because your legacy starts not in what you leave behind, but in who you walk with today. If this stirred something in you, don't let it go silent. Subscribe, share this message. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what's next. We are not building followers. We are awakening leaders. Your calling is louder than your fear. Your legacy is written in obedience, and heaven is watching. Let's rise. What we've just explored isn't just the story of Moses. It's a mirror, a call to rise, to lead, to walk with God even when the path costs everything. You were not made to be ordinary. You were made to carry fire. If this message moved you, subscribe to the channel, share it, and walk boldly with Jesus. Don't just listen, live it. I'm Oliver, and it's an honor to walk this journey of truth and faith with you. Until next time, stay rooted in His Word, relentless in your purpose, and never forget, you are chosen. See you soon, family.